Most big championship wins in WWE are saved for pay-per-views to give them more prestige, but they also have a flagship weekly show to think about. And you know what? Sometimes the audience gets thrown a bone and are given a belt swap for free on Monday nights. Aren't we a lucky bunch? I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best WWE Raw title changes. Join us! Number 10, Marty Jannetty wins the Intercontinental Championship. Monday Night Raw launched on January 11th, 1993, looking and sounding very different to the show we know today, and not just because of the big Ico Pro banner. One of the show's first major moments came on the May 17th episode of its maiden year, when two friends turned enemies squared off in a title match for the ages. It had been about 18 months since Marty Jannetty flung himself through the barbershop window to try and escape Shawn Michaels, which led to the breakup of their team and kickstarted one of the greatest singles careers in wrestling history. An HBK singles run too. In a match that could have taken place at WrestleMania 9 had Jannetty not gotten himself released prior to the show, the former Rockers squared off on Raw with the Heartbreak Kids Intercontinental Championship on the line. After a stellar contest that won PWI's 1993 Match of the Year award, Marty scored a huge win over the Sexy Boy, picking up his first singles title in WWE. And just how did his career shape up after this pivotal moment? Well, you can look that up for yourself. I don't feel like depressing myself today. Number 9, Santino Marella wins the Intercontinental Championship. 14 years after Party Marty emerged from a Raw crowd to win the IC belt, a similar thing happened on the April 16th, 2007 episode of the show, emanating from Milan, Italy. Mr. McMahon, who was wearing a hat because he'd just had his head shaved at WrestleMania 23, invited anyone in the audience to challenge his personal monster Umaga for the Intercontinental title. Up stepped Santino Marella, who was definitely a normal Italian man and not a jacked up wrestler from Canada doing an accent. The fan accepted the match and proceeded to get his ass whooped by the Samoan Bulldozer. Cue Bobby Lashley, who had beaten Umaga at the aforementioned Mania. The big man ran out, laid out the champion and draped the newcomer over his prone body. 1 3 count later and Santino had the gold. Though it's a bit silly to look back on now, nobody expected WWE to do anything like this at the time, and it really did come as quite the shock. This upset win would stay a part of Santino's character for the rest of his run, even after he devolved into a complete goofball. Number 8, The Rock and Sock Connection win the World Tag Team Championships. The Rock and Sock Connection are one of those wrestling acts that people forget were only around for a relatively short period of time. Despite only being active for a handful of months between 1999 and 2000, the duo of The Rock and Mankind won the World Tag Team Championships 3 times. Their first victory went down on the August 30th, 1999 edition of Raw. After an age of them bashing each other's brains out, okay, it was mostly The Rock bashing Mick's brains out, but who's keeping score? These former foes teamed up to take on tag champs, the Unholy Alliance. Do you remember who was in that team? I'll give you a couple of seconds. Wrong! Undertaker and Big Show. After the dead man walked out on his partner, the good guys were able to get the upper hand over the Giant, eventually scoring the pinfall with a double people's elbow that caused Jerry Lawler to malfunction on commentary. This reign would last for a whopping 8 days, but it was a nice moment nonetheless. Number 7, Cody Rhodes and Goldust win the WWE Tag Team Championships. Before one was the American Nightmare and after the other one was Seven, Cody Rhodes and Goldust joined forces to take on the Authority, which went so well that they both got fired. Nice job, lads. After winning their jobs back in the highly emotional match against The Shield at Battleground 2013, Cody and Dustin faced off against Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns once again on the Raw from October 14th, this time with the Tag Team Championships on the line. Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns at a title match? I've seen this before. The Sons of Dusty got another win over the Black Jacket Squad to capture their first tag titles together, yet another highlight in this very underrated rivalry. But you know what would have made this moment even better? If they hadn't won the match thanks to The Big Show, who led the crowd in a yes chant because WWE were trying to get him over as the anti-authority babyface. Shows you how good this match was that it made the cut even with this nonsense tacked on to the end. Number 6, Lita wins the Women's Championship. For some reason, WWE insists on telling fans that the first all-female main event of Monday Night Raw was Trish Stratus vs. Lita on December 6, 2004. This is a complete lie. Lita won the Women's Championship from Stephanie McMahon in the main event of the August 21st, 2000 show over 4 years before she battled Trish. But hey, what even is the truth anyway? Though it may not have been as historic as the company would like it to be, Lita vs. Trish from that 04 Raw was still a bloody good match. It was the first proper all-female main event of the show where the two women could actually work and weren't just there because they were related to the boss. They put on a great show and demonstrated how unappreciated women's wrestling was at the time. They were only given 7 minutes, but they crammed a lot of action into that time, capped off with a moonsault from Lita that didn't look like she was going to do herself in for once. Lita had won her second women's title, and Raw finally had a women's main event it could be proud of. Number 5, Sasha Banks wins the Women's Championship. In the early days of the second brand split, one of the big rivalries on Raw was between Women's Champion Charlotte and plucky challenger Sasha Banks. As well as their history in NXT, these two had crossed paths many times on the main roster, including at WrestleMania 32 in an epic triple threat. On the July 25th, 2016 episode of The Red Show, they went one-on-one, and you will never guess what happened. Actually, you probably will because I spoiled it less than a minute ago. Whoops. After a typically strong performance from both competitors, Banks applied her bank statement submission hold and forced the champ to tap out, marking the first title change in the history of this new version of the women's belt. An emotional Sasha gave a touching interview after the bell as the fans roared with delight at her finally overcoming her great rival. This feud would continue with the two swapping the belt throughout the year, including in the first all-female main event of Raw since Trish and Lita in 04. That said, I got that information from WWE.com, so who knows if it can be truly trusted or not. Number 4, Paige wins the Divas Championship. The Raw after WrestleMania has seen its fair share of championship changes, including this one just 24 hours removed from WrestleMania 30. AJ Lee, holder of the cursed Divas Championship, had just defended her belt against 13 challengers at the Show of Shows in a how can we get all the women on the card match. The champ bragged that she had just beaten everyone there was to beat, which summoned a young woman from Norwich, England. This was the main roster debut of Paige. The then NXT Women's Champion got into it with AJ, leading to an impromptu title match. The challenger got the better of her opponent, hitting the Paige Turner to scoop the butterfly belt in a shocking twist. As well as popping the hardcore crowd, this win had major ramifications for WWE as a whole going forward. This started the tradition of a major NXT name debuting the night after WrestleMania and assured fans that talent from the black and gold brand would be treated well upon their call-up. It didn't always work out like that, but at least there was some brief hope. Number 3, Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho win the World Tag Team Championships. I am no medical expert, just ask Andrew Hodkinson after that amateur appendectomy I performed on him, but I would say there aren't many situations that would be improved by a torn muscle. As it turns out, the main event of Raw on May 21st, 2001 was one of those rare exceptions. The two-man power trip of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H were putting their World Tag Team Championships on the line against the Federation of Canadian Chris's, the name I've just come up with for the duo of Jericho and Benoit. Whilst attempting to break up a Walls of Jericho towards the end of a terrific contest, the game completely tore his left quadricep, an injury that could have ended his career. Did the match get called off so Trips could get help? You know full well it didn't. Instead, Hunter gutted it out, performing the match as planned whilst in agonizing pain. This Herculean performance elevated what was already a pretty outstanding match as the Chris's beat the power trip to end their tyrannical grip on the belts. Benoit and Jericho might have had their arms raised, but the real winner here was Triple H's reputation. Number 2, Dolph Ziggler wins the World Heavyweight Championship. Paige beating AJ Lee was nice and all, but when it comes to Raw after Mania title changes, this one takes the cake. For 267 days, Dolph Ziggler held on to his Money in the Bank contract, waiting for the right moment to pounce. He didn't cash in at SummerSlam, Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, or even WrestleMania, with many wondering if he would ever pull the trigger. And then it happened. After World Heavyweight Champion Alberto Del Rio defeated Jack Swagger and Zeb Coulter in a handicap match, doesn't that just sound like the greatest thing ever? Ziggler's music hit, sending the crowd into a frenzy. The show-off cashed in the briefcase and then proceeded to have a short yet very tense match with Del Rio, finally hitting the zigzag to win the big one to a rapturous ovation. This was a long time coming for Dolph, who had toiled away in the mid-card for years, slowly gaining fan support for a main event push. Now he was on top of the world and was gonna stay there for a very long time, right? Right? Guys, come on. Number 1, Mankind wins the WWF Championship. Because Raw was often taped whilst Nitro was live, WCW's announce crew sometimes used to give away their competition's results during their broadcasts. Famously, on the January 4th edition of Nitro, the same night as the Finger Poke of Doom by the way, Tony Schiavone announced that Mick Foley would be winning the World Championship from The Rock on WWF TV. That'll put butts in seats, he sarcastically said, and he was absolutely right. Droves of viewers changed the channel to watch Foley in his Mankind garb battle The Rock with the Corporation and DX at ringside. After a wild brawl between everyone, who should arrive but Stone Cold Steve Austin to one of the loudest pops in wrestling history. Swinging a steel chair like a man possessed, the Texas Rattlesnake turned the tide in favor of Mankind, allowing Mrs. Foley's baby boy to pin the Great One and win the world title for the first time ever. Not only did this title win generate one of the loudest sustained crowd reactions WWE has ever seen, and not only was it the culmination of years of hard work and torment from Foley, but this was the night that thousands of wrestling fans swapped WCW for WWF and never looked back.